Okay, I remember what I was last supposed to say, and I realized how much notes I actually have that I haven't went over yet in this book, not even on this paper, for like the main points. Okay, now the sun's starting to come out and it seems like it's starting to get hot. I don't know. Oh dang, maybe it is gonna get hot. It's so confusing because it's been so cold. I really gotta use the bathroom. I can't even lie. Anywho, let me start. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the last video. I'm probably gonna be whispered off and on, I'm not gonna lie. But the last video, I stopped where I was about to talk about a post I seen that said, "Has being homeless hardened you?" And my thought to it, I don't think I left a comment, I'm pretty sure I didn't. But my thought for this that could go along with this series is that it didn't harden me. I didn't get to a point of like, screw everybody else. I mean, to be truthfully honest, a lot of us never really had real homes to begin with. Like, a lot of people out here, just like me, are either abuse escapees or runaways. Well, / runaways. They got kicked out, or they grew up in the cash for kids system, whatever branch, whether higher level trafficking or like lower level cash for kids system. Some grew up in foster care their whole life, so they've been homeless their whole life. So yeah. Anywho, my point with that though is that it didn't harden me, but it did make me feel like being less of a savior to people who are always talking about their situations but won't actually do anything to fix it. And I know that like not all situations are that easy to escape. I know like if you're chained to a table or locked in a basement, running away isn't going to be that easy. But for the people whose situations are easier to get out, it definitely made me feel like less of a savior for them. And I can't say though, nobody believed I was going to make it out of my situation alive. Nobody believed I would ever be able to run. But honestly, now looking back, I wish I would have left sooner, and it really wasn't even that hard, to be honest. You just have to have the right mindset. And I know for a fact that the angels are always protecting me and stuff, because a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but some people, when they leave, things do happen, but nothing's happened to me. And honestly, it wasn't even just people saying that something was going to happen. People are always going to try to like use fear tactics to scare you back into a bad situation. But like overall, people kept saying that I would never be able to get out of my situation, and that it was too hard. And of course, some of the people who were saying these things were like cash for kids system stuff who get paid off of my situation. So they wouldn't really want to admit why they weren't doing their job, or their quote unquote job, to quote unquote help. And they would like make up these different reasons of why I couldn't get out. Even other people that didn't have ties to the abuse didn't think I'd get out. Like I remember one of the moderators that doesn't like me, but I'm not even going to go into all that, had told me that it seems like running away wasn't working for me, and that I wasn't going to be able to get out, and that I just needed to like try to beg one of the mental health professionals or something to help me. And I was like, first of all, you know good and well that because I had like 2 whole playlists about this whole situation, where I had this one therapist that I was finally allowed to talk to, and then my mom had threatened them, told them to stop talking to me because she felt like they called CPS. and reported her for Munchausen and some other stuff, even though they didn't, because of course they get paid to help her, but she thought they did, so I wasn't even allowed to talk to them anymore way before I had left. But yeah, that's a whole nother story. But the point is, no one thought I'd get out, and I did, and it's just made me feel less, I guess I could say maybe sympathy for people that like to sit around crying and complaining about their situation but won't actually take the steps to get out of it. Like, I remember this one girl who was always talking about how she wanted to run to get out of her situation. She had a car. Well, her mom gave her her old car, so of course there's like a tracker and stuff on it. But still, she had a car. She was always talking about how she was buying, I think it's called Wolfgang or Golf Gang or Golf Twang. I don't know, but some expensive clothing brand that I think was owned by Tyler the Creator. And she was talking about how her mom was always locking her in her room and locking her in closets and beating her up and making her cook for her friends but wouldn't let her eat. And she was in middle college and she would drive herself to school, I'm pretty sure, and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's like, even though her mom was rich, and it means that like it could be even more risky because her mom could pay people to find her and stuff like that, she still had a little bit more than most people in abuse situations, to where if she really would have thought something out, she really could have got out of there. And just other situations where people they say they want to leave but they're too scared of the unknown to leave, or they have all these different excuses. And it also makes me think of something from something that's actually a recent constant occurrence, but also reminds me of a situation that happened, I think maybe on my not my part 1 channel. I think it was on like the part 3. And it revolves around abused kids being left in apartments or houses by themselves for years on end, but they never leave the house because they're scared to leave and they're told not to leave, and then they end up like with a lot of health issues to where they can't really walk, and because they sat in the house. And this one recent case, people said they just play video games all day, which makes me wonder if they had internet access, because it sounds like it. And look, I'm not trying to victim blame anybody, but I'm trying to figure out how to like word this because I'm already kind of nervous. But no, actually, let me go back. So the situation from the part 3 channel or part 2, whichever one it was. This was I don't even remember what year, but this was the part of the abuse evidence channels where I had already been living with we were living in my sister's house, my older neighbor sister's house. But I had already been living with my mom, her boyfriend, and a whole bunch of other people for a little while. And there was a lot going on, as usual. This was before the whole thing where CPS had snitched about the videos and got some deleted. So I still had the part 1 and part 2 channel, too. And I think I had already had the part 4. And so this one boy had left this comment, and he was like, you're saying you're being abused, but I see no abuse videos, because I guess he obviously hadn't been really watching them. And he was like, in my situation, I've been abandoned in a dilapidated apartment for over a year or two, and the ceiling's falling apart. There's roaches everywhere. There's no food, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I'm pretty sure I said something pretty good. And I remember the main point. I was like, if you haven't seen any abuse evidence, then you obviously haven't been watching the videos. But either way, none of that really matters that much. I'd rather you've been watching the videos or not, because it seems like what you're trying to do is compare a situation and say your situation is worse than mine. For one, running around comparing abuse situations is just really not it. And if your situation is so bad, then leave. If you've been abandoned in an apartment for over a year, obviously that person doesn't care and isn't coming back. So you have the ability to leave. I have cameras in the kitchen and cameras everywhere, and I'm still trying to plan how I'm going to get out of here. But you've been left in the house to somebody who's pretty much told you they don't want you. Or not even, well, of course, abusers really don't want their victim in general, but they do like having the supply. So when they're trying to like trap you to keep you as supply, it can be harder to get out than in a situation where the abuser literally left. And I was like, if you have all this going on, then leave or tell somebody or something. And of course there's no system put in place to help, but I mean, if somebody really did want to go into CPS for whatever stupid reason they think that CPS is good, being abandoned in a house that's fallen apart is a very good reason for the police to actually maybe do something, and CPS. And so that's one example. It's like you're talking about how bad your situation is, but you won't get out of there. And that's like one of the best situations to just walk away. A situation where you've just been abandoned in a house for 3 years, you can definitely walk away from that. So yeah, and then the funny thing about that is that a little after that boy left that comment, there was this whole case that came out about some kids that had been abandoned in an apartment for some years, and one kid was like 14, and then one was dead and his skeletal remains had been left for some years, and there were roaches everywhere. And then somebody had even found out about this one daughter who apparently had ran away some years ago but was never found, but then she quickly told people once they found out about her to leave her alone, and that she was somewhere safe now, and that she didn't want people making videos about her, and that she didn't even want to be known as being related to any of them. So eventually those videos about her were deleted, and that part was never talked about again. And I think she was still underage at the time, but I can't really remember. But yeah, so being homeless hasn't hardened me, but it's definitely made me feel less sympathy towards people that like to talk about their situations and claim they want out, but they don't do anything to get out. And I can definitely say, if you consider making comments on YouTube, you can definitely do the research on your trauma symptoms and the spiritual side to all of it, and just different things that can help you get the mindset you need to leave. Or better yet, if you're abandoned in a house and you have your vital records, try to get a job somewhere. That's what I would do, because when I was in my situation, I wasn't able to work. And of course there was all the ageism with jobs too, but especially if you have good public transportation in your area. But yeah, it's like a lot of people like to do a lot of talk, but they don't really do what they need to do to get out. So I wrote, it made me stop being so much of a savior to people who won't save themselves like I did. Okay, if I have enough storage space for this part, so I'm going to go into some other things that people who are desperate will say, people who are desperate and didn't really do the work that they needed to do before leaving or trying to leave. So there's this one situation where this girl who had already been sexually abused or trafficked by her mom, I might be getting two different people mixed up, but she was like, I'm already used to sexual abuse and I don't care if I get sexually abused again as long as I get out this house. And it's like, that defeats the purpose of leaving in the first place. You don't leave one abuse situation to go to another. Another thing, if somebody has to get you to say age gap isn't that big or isn't that bad. So when I was still in GA, this was like a few years ago, I was pretty much living at an IHOP. And the IHOP had two child molesters, but the one new one, who was actually from Cali, that talked about how he used to traffic people in Cali, I called him the Mr. Bean pedophile because, well, no, I called him the light-skinned Mr. Bean pedophile because he looked like a light-skinned Mr. Bean. And so, he was always, quote-unquote, having game or whatever he called it and getting people's numbers who came in the IHOP, specifically younger people. And there were these two boys there. One boy lived with his aunt. The other boy had an abusive stepdad who kicked him and his brother out and had them living in the garage because they snuck to a party. So yeah, they snuck out the house, so they got kicked out, which is stupid. But anywho, so both of them were vulnerable enough to listen to this dude who called himself quote unquote teaching them how to have game, but really he was just teaching them how to be lustful perverts. And so, anywho, he had got this one lady's number. And of course, people like this, they only get numbers to really get with your kids or to get with you if you are a kid or if you're young. And the lady asked him how old he was, and I forgot how old he was, to be honest, but he was way older than her. And so then he told her, and she was like, well, that's not that bad. Anytime you have to say that's not that bad, it's that bad. So there's that. And I can definitely say she was like 30 something. And it kind of reminds me of this whole young and dumb thing, which I plan to maybe make a video about, hopefully. And it's like people have all these ages sayings, but people seem to stay young and dumb till they're like 50 something, especially these days. And it's probably been, well, not probably, it's definitely been going on for some generations because, for one, people are desperate because they're raised in neglect and abuse, and then people are raised to be stupid pretty much, from the indoctrination in the school system to the bull crap with the broken family systems and how the family systems have been destroyed for generations now. So yeah, young and dumb really never goes away. And then number two, well, not number two, that's just what I wrote down, but this is definitely not number two. But another thing is people who use your situation against you to reel you in or manipulate you. Which is also why you really shouldn't tell people your previous situation anyway, especially if you were going through like the Cash for Kids system and you were getting the different mental labels. Because if you tell people that, they're going to use that against you. So an example, like if your relatives were saying you were retarded or schizophrenic or whatever, ADHD, any of those things, when somebody wants to manipulate you and they know this, they could say, well, maybe you are retarded, or maybe you are schizophrenic, or maybe you really are defiant, etc. Or, example, you're not ready to change. Oh no, this is another thing. This is something that people use to manipulate people who are specifically in the homeless community. So like this pedophile quote unquote priest dude who would show up every now and then. He thinks I'm 11. He will show up every now and then, once in a blue moon, to quote unquote give out food and help people, but really he was just trying to manipulate people. Young guys and me. I don't really, well, there are some other people, some other girls out there that are around my age, but like I don't see them a lot. So yeah, anywho, he was trying to lure me in to become a sex slave, of course, and to move in with him or someone he knows, quote unquote. And I was like, of course not. And he used the usual rhetoric that people use on homeless people that won't go for anything. He was like, you're not ready to change. You're choosing to... Oh no, hold up, that's not even what I wrote. Hold up. But anyway, he was like, I guess you're just not ready for change then. And when you're ready for change and to fix your situation, you will. There's so much I don't like about this rhetoric. From the fact that when somebody's laying low till 18, they can't do anything, but also it's like you can't do anything till 18, which means that you can't really do anything till older than 18, because you can finally, if you even have your vital records anyway, you can finally get an ID at 18. You can finally try to get a job at 18, but that stuff is going to take a while. And then you can finally enroll yourself in school at 18 if you feel like, or if you've been brainwashed and thinking that that's going to save you. So that means that you're not really doing anything until you're like in your 20s somewhere. You really can't. But that's not even what I wrote down, actually. I just didn't finish reading it. This is actually something else, another example. And this example is, you're not ready to change, or you're choosing to be abused at home. This is for somebody's trying to lure you out of the situation and claims they want to save you. You're choosing to be abused at home or to be homeless than to stay with someone and have sex with them or join a cult. Those are actually a few examples of manipulation tactics that people could use. I didn't remember I wrote all of that though, but yeah, there's that. This was somebody who was Jezebelic and was desperate for parental love. And like I always say, people that have cognitive dissonance around their abuse and hold their abusers, and hold up, I'm choking, wait a minute. I still have some of this kidney tea, or at least that's what I'm calling it. But anyway, people who hold their abusers in highest esteem and have cognitive dissonance around their abuse, they're going to do the same thing to you. And people like that commonly are already Jezebelic, and they're going to get worse and worse over the years. But anyway, this lady was like, she wanted to give her parents money because she knew it was like the only way she could really show her affection, since they don't like her and there's no love, and they'll barely let her talk to them and a whole bunch of other stuff. This is someone who's technically been homeless since 17, but she's been in a lot of abusive and culty woofing jobs, so like working on farms. And yeah, but that's a whole nother story. So there's that, feeling desperate for parental love, wanting to give them money, lying to yourself about the situation. Oh yeah, another situation. But I write in code sometimes, so I couldn't remember what this said. So there was this whole situation I seen. I actually seen two of these. I think both were on Beyond Scared Straight. So one situation is this boy shot his mom's boyfriend because he hit her, and of course she's the usual Jezebel, liked her boyfriend more, so she called the police. I mean, people could say she's gonna have to do that anyway, but of course she's gonna go to jail, because when you're underage, you're not allowed to defend yourself. You have no self-defense rights, and you definitely can't defend yourself when you're young, even into your 20s, against abusive relatives or parents. And so, anywho, she also chose to press charges. Like, with how the systems are set up, since they're made by pedophiles who hate youth, he would have went to jail anyway, but she specifically wanted to press charges. And the thing is, people like that, you can't care about them. I get that, like, people get really attached to their parents and they feel like that's all they have, but you gotta stop all of that. Leave those people to suffer in what they choose, because you can't save them. And with how things are set up, you can't defend yourself, and you can't even defend them. You just gotta leave them to let whatever happen to them that they let happen to them. Because Jezebelic people love to be in victim situations anyway. So, yeah. There's a lot I can say about that. And I know people say that this sounds harsh, but like I said, I haven't become hardened. I don't hate anybody or any of that, but even in my situation, I learned a lot about when people are willing to save themselves and when they're not, and people playing the victim when they're honestly a perpetrator too, which that's common in these domestic violence situations, where people be like, I used to think I had one nice parent, but really you had two bad parents. One was either the enabler, or they were both abusive, even to you, but one was less abusive. And people can say what they want about domestic violence situations, but the way I see it, there is no nice parent in this situation. There's either one codependent parent or one that's less abusive, but domestic violence is still abuse anyway. But yeah, so I don't have the favorable look on the situation, but commonly both parents are Jezebelic anyway. So In fact, I recently seen this video of this situation where this boy, who of course would have the quote-unquote black label, he hit his, I think, grandpa because he kept beating up his grandma, but I guess he was adopted or something because they both were quote-unquote white, because of course I really don't like these labels. And the police came and they were about to handcuff him, and people were like, oh, it's because he's black. It's not, because none of that stuff is true. Honestly, the whole video is probably staged, but people will look at this and see the whole color bull crap. But he's not getting arrested because he's quote unquote black. He's getting arrested because he's a youth that defended himself. And with the laws made by chomos, that's not allowed. If he was white, he would have went to jail. There were 12-year-olds that defended themselves against abusive parents. And in fact, this specific 12-year-old, he was quote unquote white. And they still were trying to put him in adult prison at 12 for defending himself. So, anywho, the good thing about this situation, though, is that the grandma was like, he shouldn't be arrested because he was defending me. So she wasn't like I guess she wasn't the type that wanted to play victim in the situation, and she was willing for the boyfriend to go to jail. Usually that's not the case. And I know people say that, like, in domestic violence you get brainwashed and stuff, but at the end of the day, with every agenda that's pushed, the youth are always the ones who take the real hit. So, yeah, anywho. Like, I could give an example from my specific situation, because I recently have some memories of this. Because, of course, after I left my situation, everything became repressed memories, and I couldn't even remember what my parents or other abusers looked or sounded like, at least until going over the abuse evidence videos. So, my mom, of course, she was